It is early December of 1961, and a man sits on a plane bound for Leopoldville, the capital of the Republic of the Congo. This man sits with his hands bound, bloodied and bruised from the beatings he had received from his captors, the men surrounding him with assault weapons. This man, the first Prime Minister of the Congolese Republic, Patrice Lumumba, is on his way to his death. It had been over half a century since the Congo had been taken from the Belgian King Leopold by the government he was figurehead of. But despite a reduction in the number of atrocities committed by the colonial authorities, the exploitation of the Congolese people did not stop. After World War II, a wave of anti-colonialism swept through Africa, and the Congo would be swept by this nationalism, with multiple political parties forming during this time, notable of which being the Mouvement National Congolais, or MNC, which was led by Lumumba and operated as a moderate party, and the Alliance des Bakongo, or Abako, led by Lumumba's rival, Joseph Kasa-vubu, who advocated for more radical ideology based off of promotion of regional identity. There was also the Confédération des Associations Tribales du Katanga, or CONACAT, which advocated for federalism, but mostly represented the southern province of Katanga. This party was led by a man named Moise Tshombe. There were also many other political parties and factions. In early January of 1959, riots broke out in Leopoldville after a peaceful demonstration turned violent when the Force Publique used force against the protesters. Riots became common in 1959 as the Congolese advocated for immediate independence, to which the Belgians responded by establishing a parliamentary working group on the independence of the Congo. When even their own parliament advocated for internal autonomy, the Belgian government finally relented, holding a round-table conference of all the major Congolese parties in Brussels on January of 1960 and setting June 30th as the date for independence. However, the conference ended with Congo's future left uncertain as none of the parties could come to an agreement. The Belgian government, however, also immediately began to try and sabotage and further fragment the independence movements, supporting the Katangese and accusing Lumumba of being a communist, which immediately got the United States and Soviet Union involved. When the Congo finally got its independence in June, it was a powder keg next to a match factory. On June 30th, Belgian King Baudouin gave a speech granting freedom to the Congo and framing it as the end of some sort of civilizing mission started by his grandfather, Leopold II. Afterward, an angry Lumumba gave a speech denouncing colonialism and nearly provoking a diplomatic incident. However, the speech was praised by figures such as Malcolm X. The new state had a semi-presidential constitution where executive power is shared by a president and prime minister. Kasa-vubu became the president, and Lumumba became the prime minister of the new Republic of the Congo. Despite independence, the new republic had to keep many old colonial institutions, like the hated Force Publique and the old schooling systems. Lumumba's hand was forced after a mutiny in the Force Publique formed against the Belgian commander, Emile Janssens, who had gathered his officers and wrote "before independence equals after independence" on a blackboard like some kind of twisted school lesson. Lumumba dismissed Janssens and reorganized the Force Publique into the Armée Nationale Congolaise, with Victor Lundula as the new Major General of the army. On July 9th, Belgian paratroopers dropped throughout the Congo to supposedly protect white civilians. Lumumba and Kasa-vubu were divided on this, with Kasa-vubu accepting Belgian intervention while Lumumba denounced it. At Lumumba's request, the Belgian Navy evacuated all Europeans from the port city of Matadi, but then the ships bombarded the city, killing at least 19. This prompted attacks on Europeans throughout the Congo, while Belgian and Congolese troops engaged in all-out warfare. The same day as the incident in Matadi, Moise Tshombe declared the Congo's southern province of Katanga independent from the rest of the nation, with Elizabethville, now Lubumbashi, as its national capital. Tshombe and Konakat argued that the Katangese people were ethnically distinct from the Congolese and deserved their own nation, with Tshombe stating, "We are seceding from chaos." Less than a month later, the southern part of the province of Kasai also declared its independence as the mining state of South Kasai, with its capital being the city of Bakwanga. Both governments were supported by Belgian mining companies and by extension the Belgian government. This sparked the United Nations to establish the United Nations operation in the Congo, which Lumumba initially welcomed. Lumumba also sought the help of the U.S., but the Eisenhower government refused military support. Frustrated, Lumumba turned to the Soviet Union, who agreed to supply weapons along with material and logistical support. Soon, around 1,000 Soviet military advisors were stationed in the Congo. This alarmed many, including the United States, with the CIA publishing a report stating that the Congo is experiencing a classic communist takeover and comparing the situation to Cuba. This decision also distanced Lumumba from Kasa-vubu, who announced the dismissal of Lumumba over radio on September 5, 1960, using massacres committed by Congolese soldiers in South Kasai as a reason. However, both chambers of parliament supported Lumumba. Lumumba, outraged at the news, ordered Kasa-vubu deposed, and both leaders ordered the Army Chief of Staff, Joseph Désiré Mobutu, to arrest the other. Instead, Mobutu launched a bloodless coup, placing Lumumba under house arrest, guarded by UN troops. Mobutu reappointed Kasa-vubu as president, but exerted most of the power in Congolese politics. Member of Lumumba's party, the MNC, fled to Stanleyville, where they formed a rebel government. Lumumba escaped house arrest, but was captured by UN peacekeepers near the town of Lodi on December 1, 1960, and flown back to Leopoldville, with his hands bound. The Soviet Union demanded Lumumba's immediate release, but the UN Security Council voted them down 8-2. Lumumba was tortured in captivity, then transferred to Katanga, where he was executed by a firing squad of Katangese soldiers near Elizabethville on January 17, 1961. News of Lumumba's execution sparked international outrage. By 1961, nearly 20,000 UN peacekeepers were in the Congo. The UN had issued a call for the total withdrawal of Belgian soldiers and mercenary fighters from the Congo, and the peacekeepers were under a mandate to arrest any mercenaries that they saw. In September of 1961, a company of Irish UN peacekeepers withstood a 6-day siege of Jadaville, holding out against around 3,000 Katangese and mercenary fighters, and only surrendering after the arrival of a Belgian fighter plane. In April of the next year, UN forces occupied the rebellious province of South Kasai, and by September, the South Kasai military launched a coup d'etat in the capital of Bakwanga. On October 5th, Congolese soldiers took Bakwanga, marking an end to South Kasai's secession. Since the passing of Resolution 169 in November of 1961, the UN had completely rejected Katanga's claim to independence. In early December of 1962, Tshombe signed the Cotonou Declaration, claiming to accept the authority of Leopoldville's government. However, peace talks stalled following the declaration. On December 11th, Belgian Foreign Minister Paul-Henri Spaak declared that Belgium would support the UN and Congolese government. On December 24th, UN forces clashed with the Katangese near Elizabethville, prompting UN soldiers to occupy the city and Tshombe to flee from the country. The rest of Katanga was captured by January 17th of 1963. Kasa-vubu then held a new constitutional convention, centering power around a president and naming Tshombe prime minister due to his anti-communist sentiments. However, there were still the disenchanted followers of Lumumba, at this point calling themselves the Simba, Kiswahili for lion, and the Kwilu, named after the region. These rebels held the important cities of Stanleyville and Kikwit and were openly Marxist. The rebels were supported by the Soviet Union and China, alongside many African nations including Tanzania and Cuba, who sent over 100 advisors led by Che Guevara. Starting in August of 1964, however, the rebels began to lose ground to the Congolese army. In November, as the Simba rebels were getting desperate, they gathered the remaining European population of Stanleyville and held them hostage in the Victoria Hotel as bargaining tools. This prompted Operation Dragon Rouge, where Belgian and American paratroopers dropped into the city in a hostage rescue operation. This raid saved around 1,600 foreign nationals and 150 Congolese citizens, but saw 70 of the hostages and 1,000 Congolese killed. It also broke the Simbas, who never recovered from the raid. In the aftermath of this intervention, Belgium was publicly accused of neo-colonialism. Tshombe lost his prime minister seat in October 1965, and the Simba insurgency was defeated soon after with the fall of Stanleyville. However, pockets of Simba resistance continued to hold out, notably in South Kivu province. When Tshombe rose back to prominence in late November, Kasa-vubu tried to block his rise, but himself was blocked by the Congolese parliament. With the government in near deadlock, Mobutu decided to use the military to launch another bloodless coup, taking power for himself. Mobutu removed all obstacles to his absolute power, with the reign of the man in the leopard print hat challenging the Congolese people with more decades of repression.